In the tranquility of the night, some stories quietly come to life. Welcome to Hauntings and Horrors. Now I'll take you through a chilling tales. You ever see an opportunity and thinking that's too good to be true? I read through the fine print and find out more about it, waiting with bated breath. For when it turns out you're right. Here's a piece of advice I'll give ya. I'm sure you've heard it before added to, yet here I am now. When something seems too good to be true, it is here. I am now 9 more hours sitting at this desk watching security feeds. And then I get to go home and wonder why I believe that this overpay didn't seem in the easy security position. Didn't come with a catch. Why I didn't notice all the red flags in between. Seen the offer online and get in here. Why I had genuinely believed I'd be lucky to have the chance to regret my decision after my shaft. Let's go back to her later today. There I was switching between browsing Reddit and flipping through local job offers, when a refresh of a look with job listings, I revealed something new that had caught my eye. A basic security position in the job description basically amounted to locking the doors at night, watching cameras and plotting with the company if anything bad had happened. And in the description they said that they would pay $37 an hour. I was immediately skeptical of the high wage for such a basic job, especially considering that the company had next to no info of it on the web. And just their small website had pictures of the founders and the outside of their buildings, but didn't even say what they did. However, I had the qualifications from a class I'd taken a year ago, and the possibility of walking away with $300 for a night's work seemed enticing, even if it might have been a scam. I figured he couldn't hurt to send in a resume and see what had happened. And I got a call from a private number, not even an hour after submitting my application. And the conversation was, I am the person on the other end seemed like they had no experience hiring people before, and their voice seemed to somewhat stressed out and worried a couple more red flags. But I was still in it could be legend. I haven't lost anything mindset. I'll try to recreate the phone conversation here. Ethan said, the voice on the other end. I replied it. Yes, speaking. Who was? This is I work for. I'm Paul Edwards, head of security, head of HR. I'm former head of security. I'm calling because you submitted your application to us. Paul paused. I waited expectantly for him to continue, but when the silence dragged on a moment too long, I realized he was done speaking. What about my application? Oh, we'd like you to come in for an interview. Your credentials looked well. They looked good. Yeah. Would you be able to stop by in about 2 hours? I was surprised. It seemed to me like either it was a scam or they needed the position for fast and maybe even by tonight. If it was the latter, I'm pretty sure I could talk and love to an even higher wage. So I made my decision there. I check out the address on Google Street View and see if there is any other info on it before I went there. And if it seemed olive, I just wouldn't show up for the interview. Or a sure thing. Thank you. Call. Hang up the phone before I'd even finished speaking it. Fast forward to 2 hours later. I was arriving at the fenced-off property in my city's industrial district, accompanied by the buildings. They bore minimal markets and logos, but appeared to be in fair condition and supposedly still belonged to the company I was going to see. I had pulled my 2001 Honda Civic through the attend into the parking lot. Something felt slightly off right away, though I didn't pick up on that until it was later. The parking lot was empty, except for one other car. I stepped out and I walked into the lower 2030 building facing directly under the parking lot, and the door was loud, and the receptionist's desk stood empty, and I recall noticing that there was dust in the blades of the fan and sat there. And there is no email address in the post of the job site. And Paul had called me from the private number. Unsure of what to do, I waited in the small lobby for a few minutes and I looked around at my surroundings. The entrance to assessing the glass door on the front wall is made up of floor-to-ceiling windows. A metal shutter system rested on the outer wall above the glass and the control panel alongside, and the receptionist desk set against the wall opposite the door. On either side of the room are 8 chairs and 2 small coffee tables complete with old magazines. And to the left a short hallway led past a single door on either side and terminating in a heavy, unpainted metal exterior, or bearing dents of various sizes and shapes for some odd reason, and the exterior door made me feel uneasy. All three doors contained a single small window, and the kind with wire mesh inside it, obscured by black painted cloth on the inside into the right light. Another hall. Oddly enough, I can't recall the length, and I usually have good attention to detail. Was it for doors on either side? No 216. No 216. Maybe. I'm not even sure if it had length. I didn't look at the end of the right hallway and behind the receptionist. Us with another large hallway terminated in a T intersection. The first door on the left was made of brown painted mid-L, and for a small sign saying a security office after waiting for a minute and then rushed in through the front door. "Oh, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I'm Joshua Collins, head of HR. He spoke quickly and he seemed frantic and skittish. He didn't hold eye contact for more than a second at a time. As you shook my hands, I could feel that his palms were sweaty. In Cold Bay, Heath on Newmana. I paused for a second, suddenly hit by a wave of skepticism, and I decided to test him if he could keep a story straight. And I spoke to a man named Paul Edwards on the Fallen X. I thought that he said he was the head of HR, and Joshua ignored me and continued, "Mr. Newman, my company needs a new security guard fast. The last to quit this morning, and we can't afford to go a night without somebody watching the property. We have tried to get you here as fast as possible because you'll need to be ready to work by sunset. We're in a rush, son. We'll skip the usual process. If you're able to start right now, then you can consider yourself hired. Your salary is $37 an hour and non-negotiable. Assign this NDA and you can start right now." I didn't like how aggressive he was being, but it had showed that I was right and they were looking for a fast, probably temporary hire, and I wasn't about to turn down that kind of money. I flipped through the NDA. It was a long one, so I skipped most of it. But I know how these contracts are and don't disclose company secrets in yada, and I signed it and I fell. "Oh, Josh, show it to the security office." And the orientation was short and simple. "Here's your keychain. This one opens the door to the security office. This one opens most of the other offices. This one controls the shutter on the front windows. Here's your mag light. You can use it as a baton in a pinch, but you better lock yourself in the office and call us if you see anything suspicious. All you have to do is sit in that office and watch the camera feeds. You don't need to patrol, since you don't have a partner to watch the feeds when you're gone and we don't provide a uniform. Just put your badge on your shirt and the front door is the only one. That's a lot right now. Ignore the other exterior doors in the offices in the long hallway and lock the front gate. And that's it." "What's the binder for?" I asked, pointing at the white binder in my desk bearing the company logo. "Oh, read that during your shaft," and Joshua looked uncomfortable at the mention of the binder, and he avoided my gaze as he stammered out his reply. You didn't wait to see if I had any further questions before I hurriedly laughed, getting into the only car in the parking lot apart from mine and speeding off, and I assumed my security guard role right away and went outside and locked the gate, closed the metal shutter over the front glass, and I locked the front door, and then I sealed myself in the security office and I opened the binder up. That binder's word prompted me to write this down. When I opened it, I expected a log boy write-up of a company policy involved in various situations I might happen after hours. The specific rules for dealing with burglars and vandals. You know, that sort of thing instead. And there was only one page. And what was on that page? Me to realize that this job was in fact too good to be true. And is why I'm genuinely terrified. Now, in the wild Kona. And there are 10 company rules security personnel must follow in order to ensure their safety and well-being. The long hallway is off limits. If you cross a threshold from the lobby and turn around immediately and walk back, do not run and do not look at the hallway for prolonged periods. If any security camera shows it, shut it down immediately and do not open the door at the end of the short hallway and building to is off limits. N is to be observed only if your camera feeds and if you must go outside. Use only the front door and the coffee machine will turn out automatically at 2:17 a.m. Oh, Ensure that a cup is placed beneath it prior to this time, and when the liquid is dispensed into the cup, place it outside the door of the security office. Unlock the door and do not open it again until 137 Alma. And do not leave the security office between 401 and 402 AMA. If you hear a female voice coming from an indeterminate point within a bowline, I'd like to join the left of the short hallway, and do not enter the room unless the voice invites you to do so. And do not look at her face. If you hear a male voice upon unlocking the door, return to the security office immediately. If you feel that you're in immediate danger, call this number using the phone in the security office and do not contact emergency services until sunrise, and do not under any circumstances attempt to leave the building before sunrise. I have 9 hours left in the shift. I'd rather walk out of here broke than stick around for the rest of the night. But the instructions made it clear that to stick around until morning. Wish me luck. Update to 15 Aana. It's been fairly uneventful so far, and I hope I don't jinx it by saying that I've just stayed in the office and I split my time between watching security camera feeds and browsing Reddit to calm my nerves. It's a demon coffee time in minutes. The cup is already in place and I'm hoping everything goes well. Update to a 330 alpha, and the demon coffee disappeared after being left outside of the door. I heard something knocking and scratching at the door during the time. I was told to keep it closed, though I wasn't able to see it on the cameras and the only one watching the office. Tourists started showing the long hallway, and I had to turn it off. And there's a persistent shadow in the corner of the realm. It doesn't go away, even when I shine my flashlight right on it, and the instructions didn't say anything about a shadow. So I'm just going to not touch it and occasionally check to see if I change his sizes or moves or anything. I still haven't heard the woman's voice, and I could have sworn that I glimpsed a humanoid figure on the building to cameras a few times. And though I can't find it when I expect the feeds more closely, I no longer have even the slightest doubt that this place is haunted to shit. Update 3 for 129. I was feeling pretty shaken, so I didn't write this immediately. But here's basically what had happened. I'll put it in more detail. When exposed in 345, I heard the woman's voice and I was going to ignore it until 402. But it got louder and louder until it heard 10. Okay. Then she invited me in. But I heard the male voice as soon as I sat down, and I ran back to the office. And as for what had happened at 4, I'll write that up later. I'm still really shaken by it. I'll just say that I was glad for the reinforced metal door in the office and that I really regret taking this job, and I guess I'll just pick up where I left off. At 3:45 a.m. The female voice began to whisper in a language I didn't recognize and might have been complete gibberish for all I knew, starting from a point to my left and seemingly change in direction as it spoke. I was planning to stay in the office and wait until 402 unlocked the door. But what started as a whisper got louder and louder until it began to actually hurt. The voice was all I could perceive. It came at me from every angle, and it seemed to scream directly into my mind. I realized that it had only been 2 minutes since she had started speaking it and had gone mad. If I had to wait another 14. I ran out of the office, past a dust-covered receptionist tasked, and into the short hall where I pummeled with my keys to unlock the door, and the screaming stopped as soon as I opened. The interior of the room is hazy in my memory, but I clearly recall the dust with the chair and either side illuminated in the middle of the room so dark that I couldn't see anything else. A woman sat on the far side of the dusk in motion for me to come in and sit down across. Her walk into the darkness was odd and left. Footsteps didn't make any noise, and my senses somehow seemed muffled. I had only just sat down when no voice let out a distress cry. I sprinted back to the office without looking back. I made it back exactly at 4 a.m. I could not have stopped more than 20 seconds inside of that room. I said to my last post that what had happened between 401 and 402 really shook me up. I'd promised that I'd read it on here, maybe getting it on paper or home instead. Remembering that then, when the clock struck 4:01, I heard a blood-curdling inhuman scream from the lobby on the camera feed. And I don't know what it was that I saw something inhuman. I know that, but I can't recall its shape. Dark, a little bigger than a person seen it then. And recalling a novel, it stills a horrible fear in me. So intense that I don't think I'll ever sleep again after seeing it. That thing it's printed out of the long hallway and into the lobby. It ran to the exterior door at the end of the short hallway. It beeped at it for a few seconds with Lynn. Senator. Neither see nor hear. But I was none the less sure it could kill me in an instant. He gave up on the door and instead began sprinting back and forth in the hallway outside the security office. All I could do was watch it run left to right on the cameras and listening to that horrible scream and the idea of rhythmic thumping of its homeless feet on the cheap linoleum tiles. As I watched its print, it suddenly looked at the camera. It had no eyes and I didn't see the rest of the face. All I know is that it had stopped on it and I was affixed by a tireless gaze until even its screams seemed to fade in the background. I had felt it staring into me, burning with a foreign, alien emotion mixed with curiosity. Curiosity that suddenly became hatred. As I looked at it, I knew that this being hated me more intensely than I had ever known anything could hate. It wanted to kill me. It would run forever through fire in hell in pursuit of me. It would never stop until I die its hand. I would never be free of its unending hatred. It's which hunts me down until the day that I died it towards face from the camera and lunch at the office door. And I suddenly became aware that it had never stopped screaming as it began to beat upon the scratch-painted metal. I don't know how many hours it could have been anywhere from 2 to 9. It seemed to change every time it hit the door. Its screams, as alien and human as they were, seemed to grow frustrated. It desperately needed to get an axe. Needed to rip me apart. And this door was keeping it from the one thing that I truly wanted, and this piece of metal and this creation of the abomination that his motto was stopping it from attaining. The only thing that he cared about, and the monster's screams rose to a demonic crescendo. The shadow rattled more and more. I was sure that it was about to give under the stress, and just as I was beginning to accept that I was going to die here, the cacophony of screaming and clanging cut off abruptly. I checked the time for 102. I checked the camera. Decided to test my luck with the one I turned off earlier, since it was showing the long hallway. No sign of the monster, and the door was oddly undamaged. As soon as I was sure that the screaming monster is gone, I opened the binder and I used the office phone to call the emergency number. It ran for a long time before somebody picked up Paul Edwards. Let me guess it's a screamer. How did you know he comes out at the same time? Every night stays for exactly a minute. Please, 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 please. Only copper stuff. That's not a knot at the binder. Is it gone now? And I thought that thing's staring into me. And what happened to the last guy that looked in the eye? Am I safe? He hung up the phone without another word. I glanced uneasily at the shadow in the corner. It's an ominous presence, somehow diminished by the fact that, had it moved, and I resigned that my next bathroom break will be the nearest place that slipped coffee the next time I would leave the room be at the end of my shaft, and the rest of the night was stressful. The dark figure in building kept appearing on feeds in the corner of my vision, only to vanish as soon as I tried to look closer several times. I noticed cameras showing parts of building that weren't there before an office door down the hall from. He opened and closed at its own at irregular intervals, making me jump every time. They had 555. Every odd number. Cameras showed the long hallway and I had to frantically turn them off. I could have sworn that a few of them showed a vague. I had his face in the distance, and as the night drew to a close, I noticed that the clock on my phone was about 16 minutes behind the one on the wall in the Senate. I waited until the slower of the two showed it was time to go. I didn't want to risk leaving early and getting caught by him. Whatever was responsible for the rule. It'll stay here until dawn. I'll just write a single time-stamped log of what had happened in the final hours of my shaft, because it's easier to follow that way. 630, camera 4 showed a man with my built-in hair color in the lobby. He turned to look at it and he had my face, but something seemed off about it. I blamed and he vanished. 657, and which looked on the short hallway, showed the heavy metal door rattling for about 20 seconds. 713 in the chair at the receptionist's desk fell over. 715 in the receptionist's chair was standing up. The layer of dust on it wasn't touched. 730 to a camera 16 showed a hallway and building to the end. Based on my perception of its layout, would have been outside the building's footprint. 750. I noticed symbols or perhaps characters in a foreign language. They'd appeared to be drawn in dust on the receptionist's computer screen. An ancient CRT monitor with a beige plastic exterior. An 8 o'clock. And the symbols again. The shadow in the corner of my room was disappeared, and the sunlight has finally begun to slip around the edges of the shutters, and my shift ended in IED. You can be damn sure that I wanted to book it out of there. As soon as I got, I might wave from the office to the door. Something in the long hallway caught my attention from the corner of my eye as hard as I tried not to look. It forced me to turn my head in the hallway a long distance away. Maybe 100 yards. Maybe a few steps. And distance doesn't work right. There was a phase. It had no eyes. Just depressions in its scanner. If it even had skin where I should have been. And it grinned at me with human teeth. It took a huge amount of willpower, but I managed to pull my gaze away from it. Opened the shutter in the front door, and I locked the gate and drive away. So fast there were cops in the area, I would have had my license taken away right there and that now. I took the keys out of the ground in front of the door. I felt the thing's gaze burning into the back of my head as I sped away. It became less intense with distance. But I still feel you watching me now at home across the city. Faint, but not God. I haven't slept. I haven't eaten. I tried to contact the company, but I can't find anything about them online. Then website is gone and Google returns the results. And on Google Maps there's no company listed at their address. There's no history of them on the job listing site either, even at the forest site. To write down the error engine. See number in the binder. The colony gives me an automated message telling me that the number is no longer in service. A check arrived in the mail earlier today and no return address in the name on the check. And Joshua Collins wasn't enough to go off of. He came with it out. Here's the night's pay. I have a feeling you won't be back for another shift. Any residual effects to experience should disappear over the coming days. Thank you for working a subsidiary of Extra Normal Containment Solutions and Joshua Collins Projectly. I don't know what I got myself into, I just hope I don't get tied up in any of this Extra Normal Containment Solutions. It sure sounds a whole lot like the real-life equivalent of the SCP Foundation. And if they are anything alike, I prefer to stay the whole way. I know for a fact. I won't ignore red flags in the hiring process. Like that ever again. I'll never sign up for a suspicious job offer as long as I live. It's fully cemented. Is that I now? When something seems too good to be true, it is. The stories have been told, but their shadows will continue to haunt our minds. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Hauntings and Horrors. Turn on notifications, so you won't miss any thrilling horror stories. Good night, and sweet dreams.